we're here today talking about the diverse challenges that we have with access and advocacy regarding chronic migraine. And I'm Cat Charrett-Dykes. I'm the president and founder of Chronic Migraine Awareness. And I'm here with Qasim. Do you like to use your middle name?
No,
Amin?
custom is fine.
Qasim
Yep.
Nathari?
Uh-huh.
Did I say it right?
You said it perfectly.
All right. I hate when people say my name wrong, but it's.
No, you said it fine. It
All
sounds
right.
good.
Anyway.
All right.
Tell me about what you've been doing. I know you're a very unique person because you're one in five Black men. Is that right?
Well, thanks first and foremost, Kate. Thanks for Kat. Thanks for having me. And yes, I always introduce myself, Qasim Amin Nathari, one of five Black men in America that lives alongside migraine. And I say that facetiously, but not too much, in that you would think that based on the lack of representation of Black males in the migraine space, particularly when it comes to TV, print, online advertising, marketing, and things of that nature. So I'm kind of in the advocacy space. I'm kind of one of the few visible Black males that exist in this space, and I haven't been in the space for very long.
It's fantastic that you're out and talking about it because I think a lot of people think about advocacy. They think that you have to get up on a soapbox or that you have to go up behind, in front of Capitol Hill, which are things that you can definitely do. But it's just as important about talking to the people who are next to you. When you see your friends, suffering and you go, you know what, I think you're having a migraine, or maybe you need to take what you're dealing with a little bit more seriously.
Exactly, and that's one of the challenges that we're dealing with. There's a study that I always like to cite whenever I'm having these type of conversations, uh, where one of a mutual colleague of ours, LC, Dr. Larry Charlton,
Well,
he
Elsie.
did it. Yeah, he did it. He did an amazing study about this diversity and challenges in headache diagnosis for Black men. And the numbers say that there's probably 1.5 million Black men diagnosed with migraine, at least 1.5 to 1.8, and 900,000 to 1 million of them are living undiagnosed.
Oh,
So,
easily.
yeah, so oftentimes, headaches can be attributed to other things, to lifestyle, or just dismissed as some other type of health issue. And unless you know someone with migraine or you have some kind of education around the migraine being a potentiality, you'll never go and get diagnosed, and then be able to start the road to treatment. So for me, my journey was a little bit different in that I actually had migraine as a child. Um, However, when I got diagnosed many, many years later, my neurologist then told me that when I grew up in the 70s, they weren't diagnosing children with migraines, then the science hadn't caught up. So the headaches that I was having, it was attributed to my vision until my third trip to the eye doctor. And the eye doctor told my mother, don't bring me back there anymore because I have 20/20 vision. And then, as I got older, I would just have occasional headaches, but I never thought about anything other than it being an occasional headaches because I attributed it to lifestyle. I was an athlete, so a lot of times you have headache just from being dehydrated or just the exertion that you do as an athlete. Then I also worked as a DJ for many, many years, so I kept a lot of late nights. So you're gonna have headaches. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that they got worse, and then I was diagnosed by my primary physician of all people with migraine.
And you also the I think we were talking about at one point when we met earlier about the type of migraine that you had too. Didn't you have like a hemiplegic migraine first?
Yeah, no, that was later on.
Oh, that was later.
After having migraine, after having been diagnosed for a few years, I got diagnosed in late 98, early 99, I think. And it just so happens that my primary physician was very familiar with migraine. So when I went to him and explained to him what was happening, he was like, "Oh, that's migraine." So he immediately started me on, medication. He started me out with the basics that they will, beta blockers,
Hmm.
for all those who are familiar with that language, which I'm sure, of course, you are. And after a while, of course, that didn't work, So then after a while, we moved on to other things. And it wasn't until 2003, like 4 years later, when I had that first hemiplegic migraine, was when I actually was diagnosed by a neurologist or headache specialist.
I think that's a lot of the problem that we have, or the public has with understanding what migraine is too, because I was the same way. I was experiencing migraine as a child,
Mm-hmm.
although I think they were more silent, or the headaches that I was dealing with, I expected was going to be, part of my everyday life. I thought everybody felt this
Right,
way.
right, exactly.
Also, I think the fact that I was the fifth of six children, my parents probably didn't pay attention as much as they could have.
Wow.
You know, and again, kind of like what you were saying, it's sort of lifestyle. Suck it up, you live with it, oh it's stress, oh it's this, oh it's that. It's never migraine.
Right, right. See, when I began to have these headaches, in high school, when I really started really playing basketball, and then by college when I'm DJing, they were nothing more than just headaches, and it was never at the point where it was unbearable. Meaning, I didn't have nausea, I didn't have anything like that. So I'm just said, you know what, with a good meal, some, a bunch of water, some sleep, I'm
Sleep,
okay.
right,
Right? You grind the next day, it's no problem.
exactly.
But by 99, I start having just these intense headaches, and that's when I had to go and get the further diagnosis. And like I said, I kind of battled with that for a few years, but that one morning, so that one night during the overnight when I was laying in the bed and I felt one side of my body starting to get numb, starting from my
Mm,
foot. It actually felt like, when we were little, we used to say that, your foot fell asleep. You feel
hmm.
that tingling feeling.
Yep.
It started like that. And then I started feeling it go up my leg and then up my side. And before you know it, it was in my arm. And then my whole left side of my face was like numb and tingly. And after a while, it went away. But you know how something happens and it goes away and you don't know what happened, but you know something happened to you.
Wasn't right.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah. So that morning I went to the ER, and the attending in the ER, first thing they do, they rule out stroke or heart.
Mhm.
They gave me EKG, EEG, all of that, and said, okay, well, we're just going to give you some IV to hydrate you, lay here for a while, rest. And then as he's going over my chart before discharge, I'm still laying there with the IV. He said, Mr. Nathari, he said, something you said when we went over your history just struck me. He said, I'm not a neurologist. He said, but I've heard my colleagues before talk about a type of migraine that mimics stroke-like symptoms.
Hmm.
He said, so that may be the issue. He said, so I'm going to refer you to our neurology unit and you make an appointment with them. So that was Saturday that happened. Monday morning, I made the appointment. 3 days later, fortunately, I was in. And after that appointment, the whole diagnosis, they confirmed for me you had what's called a hemiplegic migraine. They
Wow.
explained to me what it was. And at that point, once I was diagnosed with them, Cat, I started having them regularly.
Wow.
I was having hemiplegic migraines like almost every other day. And sometimes they were lasting like 2 days. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a mess. Thankfully, now I haven't had one in a few years. I finally got past that part of my journey, but it was a scary thing. So, and again, that really started me on my journey of learning all that I could about migraine. I started buying every book, everything that I could possibly find to educate me about migraine. I began to do.
You had such great care. I mean,
I'm
from
I'm
my
very lucky.
I- you know, I live in New York. I live on Long Island. I
Hmm.
do not live in a medical desert. Like I could throw a rock and I could hit, some kind of, we got Stony Brook, we
Right,
got, we got,
right,
pick something.
for
And
sure.
my first doctor said, oh, maybe my ponytail was too tight. And
Whoa,
yeah, I was completely dismissed. It was my
wow.
sensei because we discussed I used to do martial arts. He was the one because he grew up with migraine. He recognized,
Okay,
game knows game. Um,
right.
he said, "No, I think you're having a migraine," and he was the one who got me onto that treatment. Now you know, where you're living as a black man, you know the challenges that face other people. Like I said, I live where I live. It's everything. I
Yeah.
have access to people. I have
Hmm.
great endurance, but that's not the
Just
case.
yeah. But honestly, Kat, it's actually the same thing for me. I'm in northern New Jersey. There's the proliferation of doctors and headache specialists and neurologists, all that stuff like that. The challenge lies in that for the person who doesn't know what they have.
Absolutely.
For me, I know how to navigate because I know what I have. So I go and seek out the professional that I know can help me. But how about that person that doesn't know what they have? And because of the fact that there's already disparities in healthcare when it comes to people of color, Black, Indigenous
Exactly.
people of color, BIPOC, as we call it, right?
Hmm.
Where does a person know where to start? Unless they already are familiar with migraine, or they happen to see one of these commercials on TV where they describe the migraine, and they like, that kind of sounds like what I have. And then they go ask their doctor about it. But for the most part, and just with all due respect, and we are not talked about this before. If you're a Black man and you're watching a migraine commercial and it's all white women, you're not going to think that could be your situation. You don't even
Yeah,
think this applies to you. So
absolutely. And those
yeah, so that
commercials are so
so that
ridiculous, by the
well,
way.
listen, those commercials, I hate to say, those commercials, pharma is our friend. We have good people that we associate with that are in the
Absolutely.
pharmaceutical community. But those commercials, they're the bane of my existence because they do nothing to help the person on the ground who's really struggling, who that particular medication probably could help if they
Absolutely.
if it only was expressed to them in a way that was relatable or that engaged them. And this is why the work that you do through CMA and the modest advocacy that I do, and dozens of other people that are our colleagues that do this work, that's why it's very important. Because if we don't serve as the bridge to connect those people, right,
Absolutely.
to get them across the bridge of lack of information or disinformation, they're just stuck out there, and nobody cares about them, and they live their whole life with something that, even though it's not a cure, something that couldn't be treated and managed if only they knew where the resources were.
Right. And, going back to what you were saying too about those symptoms that people are living with that they're disregarding. And I think also too that people are, at least for me on the chronic side, when people hear that you're chronic, they think, oh, it's because you've had it for many years. But
Yes,
you don't have to have, you don't have to have migraine for many years to suddenly be chronic.
right.
Like all of a sudden, you only need 8 migraine a month, all of a sudden you're chronic,
That's it. Yeah,
or you're on that
hmm
path. And like you said, it could come out of nowhere all of a sudden. You think, oh, maybe you're just dealing with one or two a month. And
right.
now all of a sudden, and that being chronic changes your life completely. For
Oh, it
me, it
sure
was
does.
every day of the month, 30 days of the week, 30 days of the weeks, 30
Right,
days in the month. I couldn't tell you where one ended and one started. And the agony that I was in, I would be in a ball crying all the time. And I also, I didn't think that there was a way back from that.
right,
That I think is something else that people need to know, that they don't need to live with the agony, the suffering. There are medications, the CGRPs that are out now are life-changing. Um, the other medication, then there's also the non-pharmacological pharmacological, couldn't get that
right,
word out,
right.
options like cephalene, Irvia,
hmm
Gammacore, all of those things that,
hmm
people just have
Yeah.
so many more options that they need to know about.
Yeah, when I was in my worst, my worst existence, living with migraine, I actually tried even, homeopathic thing. I tried acupuncture, and
Oh,
it worked. It was tremendous. Because that's another thing that people oftentimes don't realize about challenges like migraine. It can debilitate you to the point where you can't even function in the workplace anymore. I had to change careers and
yeah,
basically become an entrepreneur, by force, because I worked in an environment where it just wasn't tenable for me to have migraine. I give you an example. I worked in municipal government, in the city that I was born in, and I can say this because the woman I worked with, she'll never watch any of these interviews anyway. I'm not going to mention her name though. One day, I know I was going through a bad stretch of migraine for like a couple of weeks, so I was out a day, and I came in the next day, and she said to me, she said, I wish you could give me, I wish you can give me more of a heads up when you're going to have a migraine, because I need to change the order of, kind of how the office flows, and it would just help me be able to plan the day better. So I had to tell her, I said, well, unfortunately, after I looked at her like she had, three heads, I said, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. I said, do you know how easier my life would be if I could predict when I'm going to have a migraine? I said, so I can't give you a heads up when it's going to happen. I can't leave on Tuesday night and tell you, oh, I'm not going to be in tomorrow because I'm going to have a migraine, you know. So I think at a certain point she realized the sheer absurdity, or I think young people say the ridiculousness
Uh,
of what she
right.
said, right? So, but ultimately at that point, I knew that I had to really look for an alternate path because I wasn't going to be able to work in that kind of environment. And then as things would happen, by 3 years after that, I had already left that job. But no, 4 years after that, I ended up. It was so bad. I ended up having to go on disability for a while because it was
Wow.
very bad, and it took me 3 years to win my disability case.
That a lot of people have that problem because they don't see
3 years.
migraine as a disability.
Yeah.
Last I heard, it's not even in the list of diagnoses, that the closest thing that they have to it is epilepsy.
Yes.
That
You
would, and
know,
they've been
I was
fighting
so
for that. And HOH for headache on the hill is one of those things to
right.
get it into the list of diagnosis.
Get into this diagnosis. Yeah, and you know what? I gotta say, even with having to wait 3 years, after a couple of denials, and I had an attorney that went through the process. I was so fortunate that when I finally had the hearing, to give, for the final appeal, I actually had a judge, the hearing officer, it was a judge who was sympathetic to migraine to the point that even when I was in the courtroom, she actually said, she was like, Mr. Nathari, I apologize about these lights. So if you want to keep you want to put shades on, you can.
Wow.
I wouldn't be disrespected at all because these lights are horrible for those that live with migraine. So at that point, in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to win this case,
Mm.
because she gets it. And again, like I said, but it was a long road getting there. So now part of my mission is to be able to identify people who live with those things, uh, and live with those challenges, so they don't have to go down the road that I may have went down, or you, or many others that are like us. You know what I mean? We have the
Absolutely.
experience. We have the experience on the ground in real time that our advocacy efforts can really help people. So at this point, I'm just trying to amplify it because another major issue, and I tend to get passionate when I talk about this stuff. So I start rambling, just shut me up, right?
Oh, well, I'm with
One of
you.
the
We could do this.
one of the things that happens, Kat, is that, see, within the Black community, within Black America, and I wrote an article for one of the health foundations about this that's still on their website. There's a real stigma around Black men discussing pain because part of Black culture is, suck it up. You're a man. You're a boy. What are you crying for? You don't cry. You suck it up. You deal with it. So as men, it becomes a stigma to have conversations about pain. So you have people that will live with painful ailments, and it's like they don't want to talk about something like migraine or whatever because they let somebody just tell them, "Oh, it's just a bad headache. Drink
Mhm.
some water, take some Tylenol, you'll be okay." So that becomes like perpetuated throughout the society and community, and then that's how you get to where you have this 900,000 to 1 million people that are said to be undiagnosed because they don't go any further than just living with it, just grin and bear it. So I think us as a migraine community, as a community of advocates, and I think big pharmaceutical companies have a role to play in this. We have to do more to amplify our collective efforts of making sure that people know that information is out there. And part of it for me, and we talked about this, when we were together, part of it for me is making sure that there's people in the advertisements that look like the people you're trying to reach. It's that simple. I mean, they do it for every other thing, for every other product that they're marketing, right? They put people in that represent a demographic that they're trying to
Absolutely.
reach. So it makes me think, what? Maybe they're not interested in reaching BIPOC people. I don't know. I mean, I have to say, when I broached that subject before in
Mm.
one of the ad boards that I sat on, that I still sit on actually, it was kind of a little pushback that, oh, we pick people for these commercials based on the demographic that we're trying to appeal to. But I'm like, yeah, but
They're
that's
trying to
not a
appeal to people who don't
yeah,
know that they need to be appealed to. So it's kind of,
exactly, exactly.
which, and kind of going back to what you were saying also that talking about these things, because I don't know if it's specifically, to Black men, but I know when I was going through it myself, I thought
Hmm.
I was doing this alone. And then
Right.
started talking to people, I found out, oh, it's not just me. And then, so until you start talking about things, until you start sharing your story, you realize that you're not alone. And,
Right.
the things that you've been living with and the things you've been accepting, that you don't have to be there. You don't have to
Yes.
accept those things. And there's a lot of
Yes.
power in that. I think that um, getting support is a primary um, step to advocacy, because you start advocating for yourself first.
Yeah. You that's spot on. In fact, if you don't mind, can I share the story about how I even got involved in advocacy?
Absolutely. That's what we're here
All right.
for.
One morning, I'm laying in the bed. I'm living in Florida at the time, right? Massive migraine. I've been in an episode now for about a day or so, right? But my usual routine persists. Every morning, people that know me, I'm a creature of habit. I wake up, say my prayers, have a cup of tea. I'm watching the news, 7 o'clock. I'm watching Good Morning America. So this particular morning on Good Morning America, the chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jen Ashton, she does a whole segment on migraine. And it was the first time ever on any primetime show, morning, noon, or night, that I'd ever seen a special on migraine. I'd never seen one. In this particular profile, Cat, one of the two people that she profiled was a black woman.
Ooh.
I almost had to gasp for air because I'm like, I had to, I had to clutch, I had to clutch my metaphorical pearls that I saw a black woman that was involved in this area. So she started talking about her journey, and then I went online and found her. I saw the great advocacy work that she did. So what I did immediately, this is in the heyday of Twitter. I go on to Twitter and I find Dr. Jen, who I think I already followed, and but I commented how I felt it was such a good episode, and I thanked her and the woman who were also tagged in the tweet, about how much I benefited from it, and I wanted to see more segments like that. I was just really appreciative. So Dr. Jim was very happy about it, and then the woman and I connected, and she like, oh, I'd love to have a conversation with you and what have you. We began to talk more about migraine and advocacy, and she said, I want to interview you for my blog. And she interviewed me for her blog. She did an article, very extensive story, still on the blog to this day. This was years ago. And the blog post was titled Black Men Have Migraine Too. And 2 years ago, when I started to get involved, when I decided to get involved full time in advocacy, I took the name of that initial post, and that's the name of the organization that I represent. Black Men Have Migraine Too. And that's the platform that we're going to try to continue to build and just try to amplify, the awareness and the resources and things that are available, for black men. It's a long road. It's a lonely road because I'm out here by myself, which is why I'm thankful for opportunities when people like you think enough of me to come on and, and talk, because you can only go but so far on social media. And my challenge is that I'm not a content creator by profession. I'm a writer. So I tend to like to communicate in words, and that doesn't necessarily work for social media. So now I'm in a space where I'm starting to learn content creation, and you'll be seeing more of a presence from us on social media. But in the meantime, I've just been going around talking to people and trying to also be in those rooms where people are decision makers around how they market and advertise to BIPOC population. And hopefully that can be an important part of my continued advocacy as well.
You are an amazing voice. I'm so happy that I've gotten a chance to, start working with you, and I know we're going to do more. And
Appreciate
to
you.
say that what you're doing is modest is modest. Um, it's very important. One of the things when I started CMA, I was just a person looking for answers myself. I
Mm-hmm.
never intended on starting a nonprofit. In fact, when somebody said to me, "You should be a nonprofit," I said, "That's a
No,
terrible
right.
idea.
I'm not
I'm so
right.
sick.
Yes.
This is a nightmare. Why would I want to do
Right.
that?" But the need was out there. And I happened, one of the things I was watching was Lawrence of Arabia. And there was a line in it that they said, great things have small beginnings. And
Oh,
and that's
yes.
where we're at. Nothing,
Hmm.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
Everything has to start somewhere, and it's starting with you. And you are a great voice for that. And also to going back to the show that you watched on Good Morning America. I'm pretty sure that was Jamie Sanders.
I was
That
going to mention her name. I can't do an interview without mentioning Jamie Sanders. I mean,
Jamie
just
Jamie and I
amazing.
we worked together originally. She and I were in, we like way before CMA was established.
Right.
We did a support group together for
Hmm.
people who had really battling depression. Um, it was a lot. It was something that as lay people, I don't know that we were really ready for, but
Hmm.
it definitely led us on to more things, and you can see where she is now. She is the migraine diva that like
Migraine diva.
she's
Yes.
so proud of her. I mean, amazing. She's like a goddess now in
I love her and her work, and I tell people in a minute that she's my shiro, and we don't talk
absolutely.
regularly and communicate regularly, but I make it clear that she's my mentor and the inspiration that made me start this journey, and she introduced me into the spaces. The very first thing that I ever participated in was on recommendation from her. Like, you need to include Qasim in this. And then one particular crazy thing happened that one time someone called and they were looking for someone in the Islamic faith tradition,
Mhm.
to talk, about migraine, whatever. And she was like, "Okay, well, I got something for you. I have not only do I have someone who is Muslim and has migraine, but he's a black man." And at that point, I took on unicorn status. You know, that's what they call it. Oh, he's a unicorn. What? A black Muslim man with migraine? Oh God, let's bring him in. So I started to be the poster child for talking about migraine and faith, how they intersect. Because you mentioned depression, and we can have a whole nother conversation about that. One of the things that's synonymous, and I don't know if this is the same in the Jewish tradition or the Judaic tradition, and it may be in some cases even in Christianity, but in the Islamic tradition, there's this underlying principle about like bearing with pain,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that pain is an expiation for shortcomings. So it's kind of to get you to understand that if you live with pain now, then that's less pain that you'll deal with in the afterlife.
Yeah.
That these major religions believe in. And I think that, yeah, but like from a theological standpoint, you may want to push that, but from a standpoint of somebody who's needing treatment and diagnosis and compassion, it's a horrible proposition.
Absolutely.
It is, but it's part and parcel of what's taught, oftentimes in many religious traditions. So I like to have these conversations with people in the faith community. I like to have these conversations with people in the advocacy community, because when we do our work, there are people that we meet on the ground that live with those same challenges or those same stereotypes in terms of how they even communicate their condition. So it's really, I mean, it's so many areas and so many aspects to this advocacy world that we need to look at, which is why I don't think there could ever be too many of us, but there's certainly not enough. There's certainly not enough of us, and I'm happy that like the event that we happen to be at together. I'm happy to see when some of us are able to come together and be able to at least feel that we can get some support, from a resource standpoint, to be able to further this work.
Yeah, we have to support each other. I mean, that's what I one of those things that I learned. I'm as a woman, I kind of feel like I have to support myself, land on myself. As a black man, I would think that there's even more societal things put on him, like, as a caretaker, as a,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the man of the house, the family take the, giving, I'm sorry, I have like migraine brain now. I can't get my
No,
thoughts out.
no, no
The,
worries.
the responsibilities that a man should have, you
Right.
know, that,
Mm-hmm.
you have to live up to these things.
Mm-hmm.
And now I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere good with.
No, no, I get you. No, I have, but to that point, I'm blessed now. Hey, I just turned 60 years old in March, right? I have elderly parents. They're still in great health, thankfully, and they had me young, so I'm kind of watching them grow older at the same time I'm growing older. I'm a father. I have grandchildren, right? So you have all of these other responsibilities and societal expectations that you have to look at, and at the same
Exactly.
time, you still want to be involved in the advocacy beyond just those family responsibilities that you have. So one of the things that helps me is that over time, I've developed a strong family support system where the people that are in my inner family circle, they understand about migraine. They attain a certain amount of knowledge of it. They're not dismissive. they know that when I have to not be at a family event, that's when migraine is really bad. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They understand those things, and that's a blessing because not all people that live with migraine have that kind of support
I was
system.
just going to say that that
And it's a fact. It's impacted me. In fact, it led to divorce in two situations. I could say primarily it was because of just that was one of the contributing factors. Wasn't the only factor, but it was a contributing factor. And so it takes toll on you. This reality takes toll on all of those that live with it,
absolutely.
emotionally, economically, socially, and all of those things. So we have to factor in all of those realities into our advocacy and be able to create safe spaces to talk about it. This is why, again, I got to go back, and I got to uplift you again. CMA, this is to us important spaces. I try to do something to get black men together. I can't get enough of us in the room to even have a conversation about it. It's
They're going to happen. It's going to
I
happen.
think so. I'm confident. I'm
I know.
confident that it's going to happen, and I'm going to continue to just be diligent in sharing my own story. One of the reasons why I'm on this big push now, as we talked about before, I'm on this big push to get August designated as Black Men and Migraine Awareness Month is
Awesome.
because I think we need a month that's dedicated to that kind of awareness and advocacy. I mean, come on, we live in a country that has Hamburger Week and ice
I'm with
cream
you.
day and hot dog month, right? So why is this such an issue for us to be able to take something? And I have to just say this: I think that if there was any other specialized population that we could look at, where you can point to 1 million people living with something and being undiagnosed, I think it would be discussed in some circles as a national health emergency.
True. And the thing
I,
is,
you know,
is that if we could diagnose those people,
mm-hmm.
then the fact that we would be able to help them would help so many more people exponentially. Because the
Right.
people who are getting the least help are, I don't know if I'm saying this right, that there's, I'm not saying it right.
I guess the people. No, the people who are getting the least help are always the people who need it most.
Yeah, right. And if we
And
can
that's
help them,
that's just the
everybody wins.
reality, right? That's just the reality. So we have a long road ahead of us, but I'm so happy again to be able to work in a space now where I know that I'm not alone, because oftentimes a person can live with migraine, and if nobody else in your family has it, you don't really have any social circle or any people that you can, talk with about it, other than your healthcare provider, your primary doctor or your headache specialist or your neurologist or whatever. So
Yeah.
being able to have this extended family where we can sit and talk about it, and just being like at events where we were at together, where you're sitting outside and some people, I can't sit in the sun, that's going to be an issue for me. Oh, I can't eat this because that's an issue. And you're watching this everybody's reality about the different nuances surrounding something that we all live with, but everybody's impacted by it differently. That's an amazing thing. And I think that that's just an opportunity for us to learn so much from each other that we can put not only into our own personal toolkit, but into our advocacy toolkit as well for when we're doing this engagement that we do. I think it's such important.
There's more things that are in common with us than are not.
For
That's the
sure.
thing that we have to see.
Yes, for sure. For sure. For sure.
So how do for people who end up watching this, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
how can they find your support group and any
Well,
information that's
right
important?
now we have a presence across social media. If you're on Instagram, and I'm really focusing on that demographic because I think there's a generation of younger people and Instagram people that are probably more in need of it, even more than people on Facebook. So we have an Instagram page by the name of the organization, Black Men Have Migraine Too. We're on Twitter, or now X, under the same. We just started a Facebook page that we're going to really start building out in the new year, and we have a same name, Black Men Have Migraine Too, and we have blackmenhavemigraine2.org, which is going to go live in February. So that's
Fantastic.
going to that's going to kind of be just a resource or portal for folks to get more information and connect with people that are doing support groups, because we don't have a support group, but we're going to connect people with support groups like CMA and other places, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We'll identify what resources are out there, and we'll direct people, to those things while we continue to build the capacity around the things that we do. But definitely on Instagram is probably these days where I'm most active. So go to Black Men Have Migraine Too on Instagram, and you could find us there. You'll probably see me on Facebook. I always pop up in a lot of ads that they use my face in for this particular medicine that I take. It's kind of at the point where it's like kind of crazy because I don't receive any compensation for these ads that I'm in that have 4 million views in some
No,
places, but I don't do it for the compensation. But it's just kind of amazing that I'm like, it's like sometimes the lone black male face in these collages that I'm in around this medicine. So I'm hoping that enough people will see that and then go, in fact, maybe look for me and then be rerouted back to Black Men Have Migraine Too, where we can connect and have
absolutely.
like more substantive conversations. But being on platforms like this is really a tremendous help. And I appreciate you in advance, even though, it hasn't aired. I hope that everybody that sees it, you have a wider net than I do in terms of audience. Hope that everybody sees it. We'll just understand the reality that we're dealing with, and whatever we can do to be mutually supportive of each other, I'm all for that, and I'm willing and ready to work with everyone that is in this space and just wants to do whatever we can to make the quality of life just a little better for people that live with migraine.
And I think we're going to need to come up with a title for you, like Migraine Diva. We need to have
What are we
Migraine
going?
King or
We come up
something.
with? You're far too you're far too kind. I appreciate that. No,
So
Jamie owns that. Jamie
this is
owns
going to
that
be
diva
big.
space. Yeah, we just follow. We just following. I'm just following in the trail that she's laid, and hoping that I can have the same impact for Black men as she's had for the countless number of women, Black and otherwise, that she's inspired with her journey and her resiliency. You know, so again, we're going to continue to be active. We're going to step it up technologically now. I'm in a place where I can do a lot more, and I'm blessed to have a brilliant daughter who is a social media expert, and I'm going to allow her to take over a lot of this stuff for me in the new year. So she'll be able to make us look a lot bigger than we actually are.
You guys are big. Don't you? Like again, I'm excited for it.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's a little bit of history unfolding right in front of us. This is where it
uh,
all starts.
I
So
appreciate you, Kat. I appreciate you tremendously. I can't express it enough. Thank you so much.